what? Are they going to be able to get somebody up here?
Well, of course, ma'am. We're coming up for you.
Well, there's no one here yet, and the floor is completely engulfed. We're on the floor, and we can't breathe.
Okay.
And it's very, very, very hot.
Okay.
All I see is smoke.
Oh, please
I'm going to die, aren't I?
No. Say your...
I'm going to die.
Ma'am, say your prayers. And we're going to think positive because you got to help each other get off the floor.
I'm
now,
going to die. I know. It's so hot. I'm burning up. Hello! Help!
Hello, ma'am?
Osama bin Laden is the world's most wanted terrorist. Many to birthplace of bin Laden's terrorist organization, Al-Qaeda,
Bin Laden.
the most feared terrorist
And punish those responsible.
wanted man in the world.
Punish.
Its vast empire.
I want justice. And there's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said wanted, dead or alive.
If you go to the FBI website, they've got Osama bin Laden. And if you go to Osama bin Laden's webpage on the FBI most wanted terrorist list, you find that he's been indicted for the 1998 attacks, but not for 9/11. And in fact, a number of journalists called up the FBI and said, well, look, why have you not connected bin Laden to 9/11? And they said, well, I'm afraid we just don't have the evidence. And that's just the beginning.
September 11th, 2001, I was employed by a company called Eurobrokers, and our offices were on the 84th floor of the South Tower, which was the second building to be hit that day with an airplane. And I was working away at my computer, and at 8:46 in the morning, there was this loud boom.
The two radar systems that the military radars, defensive radar systems, read are a civilian transponder and a military transponder. Military transponder is called IFF. Civilian aircraft do not have an IFF transponder. They are not given that capability, okay? So if there was a 757, American 757 that went into the Pentagon, for example, and it shut off its transponder, it didn't have a military IFF transponder on it. So it was a primary target. It's a primary target going into that airspace, should have been shot down.
What I'm describing to you is a breakdown in standard operating procedure by FAA, NORAD, P-56, and the Pentagon, all on the same day, in the middle of, after 9/05, what was known nationally to be a terrorist attack. And it makes no sense.
Nobody goes in there.
This is, after all, the most heavily protected building on the planet.
This doesn't make any sense at all.
If I had been sitting on that committee, the congressional committee examining 9/11, the one question that they could not get the Air Force to answer correctly, NORAD, was why the fighter planes did not go up automatically when the first planes were found to be hijacked.
67 times in that year, 2001, up till September, there had been air emergencies. They can get a plane up in from 6 to 10 minutes and scramble it, and 67 times that year in air emergencies. But there was not an instance where an air emergency went ignored for long periods of time until 9/11.
A lot of people down the road say, well, the president had to give authority to shoot aircraft down and stuff like that. That is not true. An interceptor pilot has the responsibility and the authority on his or her own to shoot down an airplane if they think the situation calls for it, and this is how it would be.
You don't have to wait for a military command. You don't have to wait for orders of any kind. That's not an option. That's the law. It's inherent in being a fighter pilot. You know that's what you have to do, unless somebody has told you to stand down.
Who were these hijackers? The official story states that 15 out of the 19 came from Saudi Arabia. The identikits of the hijackers supplied by the FBI are truly bizarre. Each identikit corresponds to a number of persons. These persons are very different. They have different attitudes and different biographies. They live in different places, sometimes at the same moment.
When you speak of Mohammed Atta, what Mohammed Atta? Is it the Mohammed Atta who was in Hamburg, Germany, being run by German intelligence? Is it that Mohammed Atta? Is it the Mohammed Atta who appears in Venice, Florida, which is a major locus for the National Security Agency, who's supposedly training at a little flight school for a little single and dual engine Cessna aircraft, and who's rooming with a man named Charlie Voss, who was a CIA pilot who ran guns into Nicaragua and cocaine out for the Central Intelligence Agency? Is it that Mohammed Atta? Is it the Mohammed Atta who spoke to his father on the 12th of September, as Newsweek reported, in an interview with his father in Cairo? Is it that Mohammed Atta? Is it the Mohammed Atta who appears in a bar called Shuckham's Bar in Hollywood, Florida, doing lines of cocaine and drunk on Stolichnaya vodka, and who, when asked to pay his bill, says, I work for United States Airlines. You think I can't pay my bill? And then he says, God.
This is not the behavior of an Islamic fanatic who is about to commit a suicide martyrdom operation.
Prima che l'Atta che risiede ad Amburgo in Germania,
according to the official version, before Atta, who lived in Hamburg, Germany, moved to the United States, his American namesake was visiting an office of the Department of Agriculture, where he spoke to an employee to request a loan of $650,000. With this loan, he wanted to rent a small aeroplane and attach a large tank of chemicals to it. Upon the refusal of the woman to give him the loan, he began to threaten her, saying he would cut her throat. Then he told her he was an American Airlines pilot. He threw a bundle of banknotes onto the desk and asked for information about the security systems of the Twin Towers. He even tried to buy a poster of the Pentagon that was on the wall of the office. And then he finally went away. Well now, is this the typical behavior of a member of a secret sleeper cell? Isn't it more like the behavior of someone who is trying to be remembered?
This is not the behavior of an Islamic fanatic who is about to commit a suicide martyrdom.
The official version states that Al-Omari and Atta leave Florida heading for Boston. This is according to plan, since that is where the two aeroplanes due to be hijacked will depart. But they don't stop when they get to Boston, they continue to Maine. It is the afternoon of September the 10th. The next day will be the most important day in the two men's lives, a day on which they cannot make any mistakes. But what do? They go on a trip to Portland. They spend the night there and they attract attention to themselves with their noisy revelry. They also pay with credit cards in their names. They do everything they can to leave traces of their presence there. Next morning at 6 a.m., they fly from Maine to Boston. The plane that they are going to hijack takes off only half an hour after their flight lands. This is a very tight time window, potentially putting the whole plan in jeopardy. The circumstances surrounding the departure from Portland to Boston is very important, both in terms of the investigation and in shaping public opinion. It is there that the airport's CCTV cameras record the video in which we see the faces of Atta and Al-Omari. This video has been shown hundreds of times on television as evidence of the two terrorists boarding the aeroplane they are about to hijack. It's not true. That video shows them embarking at Portland. There is no evidence of the presence of these hijackers. It is simply something that the FBI tells us, without any proof. There is no proof. There is no way to prove the presence of any one of these patsies, these scapegoats on the planes. None at all. On September the 16th, one of the alleged hijackers of Flight 11, Abdel Aziz Al-Omari, went to the Jeddah consulate to protest his innocence to US officers. Al-Omari, a pilot from Saudi Airlines, receives an official apology from the American officers in Riyadh. Then, on the 22nd of September, Walid al-Shahiri announces he is still alive. He too is supposed to have hijacked Flight 11. From his house in Casablanca, Morocco, the impertinent al-Shahiri declares his innocence. The following day, the 23rd of September, the Daily Telegraph publishes the protestations of innocence of Saeed al-Ghamdi and Ahmed al-Nami, both of them still alive and well, and pilots for Saudi Arabian Airlines. On the 27th of September, CBS tracks down Salem al-Hazmi. According to the FBI, he was dead after Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. But curiously, he persists in hanging around alive in Saudi Arabia, where he works in an oil refinery. Have the names of Al-Omari, al-Shahiri, al-Ghamdi, al-Nami, and al-Hazmi been deleted from the list of the hijackers, with many apologies? No. These 19 people are accused as being the sole perpetrators of the terror attack.
Establish the identities of the perpetrators, and you have a serious problem in your criminal inquiry. And raising this question is not about raising conspiracy theory. It's really just about criticizing the absolutely ridiculous nature of the criminal inquiry and the fact that they have no idea who carried out these attacks. Then the fundamental question in a criminal inquiry is who did it?
They have this evil organization. They have the leader of this evil organization, bin Laden. They have a secret network in the caves of Afghanistan. It could be the screenplay of a James Bond movie.
The first bin Laden videotape that was leaked and that was used by the media to suggest that Osama bin Laden has claimed responsibility. This was a very problematic videotape. There was an analysis that found that it was completely fraudulent. There were a number of issues. There were basic issues such as, for example, Osama bin Laden was wearing a gold ring. Now, in Islamic fiqh, Islamic law, a man is not allowed to wear gold. So why is the head of one of the most militant Salafist movements wearing a gold ring? Doesn't make sense.
The video in question, that was found in Afghanistan in very doubtful circumstances by American soldiers in a house that was supposed to have been abandoned by Al-Qaeda, has been questioned for various reasons. For example, a German TV network gave an alternative translation. It is completely different from the one given by the American investigators. They are not apparently claiming a role in the 11th of September attacks, but they are simply talking about what happened on September the 11th. Many of the other videos of Osama bin Laden have in fact a person speaking and an audio track that does not correspond, or that corresponds very little, to what his lips are actually saying.
People often ask me, how can you doubt the official version if Osama bin Laden himself appeared several times on television to say, I did it? So I will tell you a little story. However, I can only tell you this story as I am unable to show you anything. We cannot show the images we do have because the owners of this material refuse permission for you to see them. In the summer of 2005, the Commission of the European Parliament for Security and Defence, of which I am a member, was invited to a special screening created by the Washington Center for Strategic Studies. We were asked to watch a film which depicted what would happen in Europe if Brussels was hit by a nuclear bomb. 50,000 deaths, 100,000 injured. The reactions of various European governments. Suddenly, footage of Osama bin Laden claiming responsibility for a nuclear attack on NATO headquarters comes on screen. All members of the Parliament, myself included, were rendered speechless. American experts from the Center for Strategic Studies were on hand to explain the action on screen. Then a parliamentarian finally said, "Today, we were shown a convincing demonstration of how Osama bin Laden's image can be completely manipulated."
Many to find of bin Laden's terrorist organization, Al-Qaeda.
All the Osamas we have seen over the years may never have existed, just as a nuclear attack on NATO headquarters in Brussels has never taken place. Now they're denying us use of these images. No matter, we will go on without them. But people, have a look yourselves. This is an Osama bin Laden from the 7th of September of 2007. Compare him with the other Osamas we have seen in the last few years. Do you believe it is possible that he is getting younger over time? Do you believe it is possible that his beard is darker than before? Do you believe it possible that his nose has grown? We don't need analysis. A child can understand that they are two different people, but these people are being introduced to us as if they were the same person. Did bin Laden organize the attacks of September the 11th? And if so, did he do it alone or with someone else? At this point, we must explain the origins of Al-Qaeda. Bin Laden founded Al-Qaeda in 1989 at the end of the war between the Soviet Union and Muslim guerrillas in Afghanistan. It was after that war and not for that war. So who or what were all those Muslim guerrillas supposed to fight?
What did Al-Qaeda mean at that time? And this is very interesting. We'd have to go to Robin Cook, the late Foreign Secretary. In the Guardian article, he confirmed that Al-Qaeda was a term that was invented by the CIA, and it had been invented to designate a database of mujahideen that were recruited and trained by the CIA. And he's right, because the Arabic word for database, you just have to add this word. It's Al-Qaeda Ma'lumat. Al-Qaeda means the base, and Ma'lumat means data. Together it means database.
Al-Qaeda is fake. Al-Qaeda is not an organization. Al-Qaeda is only a label. There is no organization like Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a list of participants in the Afghanistan war of the 80s. Al-Qaeda is nothing. It is only a puppet blown up by the Western propaganda to show the public the big evil.
I was chief of the visa section at the American Consulate General in Jeddah between September 1987 and March 1989. During my period there, I was involved in what turned out to be a Visas for Terrorists program with people coming to the consulate recruited by the Central Intelligence Agency and its asset Osama bin Laden, and sent to America either for instruction in how to be good terrorists, or for rewards, or for debriefings on what they've been doing in Afghanistan. I assume it was simply on how to blow things up, shoot things down, and overthrow governments.
After the Cold War, their connections with Al-Qaeda proliferated, multiplied. Al-Qaeda is being controlled in various ways, directly and indirectly. Systematically, Al-Qaeda has been used in various theaters of conflict. So from 1992 to 95, you look at the Bosnian conflict.
I believe that the American government was working with various Arab and Muslim organizations, whether it was Al-Qaeda or whether it was people that became Al-Qaeda, to be trained, to be armed, and to be sent to the Balkans to overthrow Slobodan Milosevic and anybody allied with him.
That kind of policy continued in the Balkans all the way up to post-2001.
American Secret Services, who only delivered weapons during the war, after the war also engaged the jobless mujahideen on their own payroll. That is a proven fact. There are a lot of testimonies of mujahideen before German courts. They were hired by subcontractors of the Pentagon, namely the private contractor MPRI, Military Professional Resources Incorporated. MPRI is formally private, but in fact it's kind of secret device of the US Army. They have more 4-star general under contract than the Pentagon itself. If the Pentagon wants to do some dirty job and thinks they cannot get the money and they cannot get the approval of the US Congress, they give the job to this private company. At the beginning of summer 1999, MPRI brought this Bosnian Mujahideen back to the Balkans, especially into Kosovo, to help the Kosovo terrorist army KLA. They engaged them, they paid them monthly. A lot of Bosnian Mujahideen were involved in the big terrorist attacks of the last 5 years. So, speaking about 9/11, 5 of 7 Arabs in the center of the 9/11 plot were former Mujahideen fighters in Bosnia. 5 of 7. Nobody speaks about it.
What is required for you to get a visa approved to enter the United States? The type of information you have to supply is extremely detailed. But a high-ranking official in the US consulate of Jeddah, Michael Springman, revealed the fact that in that office, many CIA agents were working undercover and that the office was issuing too many visas far too easily to some very suspicious people.
I was told by a really good contact, a businessman outside the American consulate, that if I had sent one word to the State Department inspection team investigating what was going on in the consulate, I would be fired summarily.